houses, we walk down and flush them out.
Welcome to the Hearts of Men podcast, a journey into the depths of men's hearts where courage meets vulnerability and wisdom embraces integrity. In a world that often measures a man by his outer achievements, this podcast dares to explore what truly defines a man of character. We unpack the challenges and triumphs that shape men's lives, bringing to light stories of resilience, compassion, and unshakable faith. We believe that the heart of a man is a treasure trove of untold stories, powerful lessons, and profound wisdom. Through authentic dialogues and insightful discussions, we aim to unlock these treasures, one story at a time. So, whether you're seeking guidance, inspiration, or simply a moment of reflection, you're in the right place. Get ready to be challenged, inspired, and transformed. And now, to guide you through this journey of discovery, please welcome your host, a visionary leader and a true catalyst for change, Dwayne Dwyer, but we affectionately know him as the Mindset Coach.
Good evening to the Empowering Perspective community this Friday evening. I am excited to be here. I'm excited to see you all here. The chat out is already starting, already lit up. Go ahead and continue to hit the like, share the podcast, share it on your social media. Let's get this conversation out. I think we're going to have a good night. And I'm here joined with my brothers. Right next to me is my big brother, poor man Dr. Phil, also known as Shift Happens. And the two coordinated brothers above me, we got the Uncle with the Funk, the consistency coach, Uncle Junior, and the mindset coach, who we know as Dwayne Dwyer. How you brothers doing this evening? Oh yeah, flip it, yeah.
Man, I'm doing all right. I missed y'all. It seemed like I ain't seen y'all in a month of Sundays as a full crew, but I'm ready to go. I got my water. I got my brothers. Let's talk.
Man, I'm feeling the same way, man. It's been a good week. Last week of school, so I got some time off so I could enjoy and relax, give me some naps in and all the other good stuff to come with the summertime. And again, like Roland said, man, it's been a few weeks since all four of us been here together at the same time. So I'm really looking forward to chatting it up and chopping it up and being part of this conversation with you guys and the chat as well.
Yes, sir. Likewise. As always, I look forward to these Friday evenings. Been a little busy week, but that's fine. Nothing I'm not accustomed to. But as always, looking forward to talking with you guys in the live chat and social media. So always excited, ready to have these conversations.
Whew, and same here. It's been a busy week, but like we said earlier, sometimes it's good to be busy. So how you're still alive and kicking in. That also means that I'm still governmentally employed at the moment. But with that said, I'm glad you all had a great week. I'm ready for this conversation, so let's jump into this. We're dealing with a strange time, but as I begin to look through just the tenure of my lifespan, I see the way masculinity has been in jeopardy on the horizon for a while. It's not a new conversation. I think it's just hit an apex. And it may feel like we're in a place where it's hard for men to provide. It's hard for for us to find jobs. Food costs almost double what it cost 3 years ago. And on top of that, there's an attack on manhood, on masculinity, on fatherhood, on brotherhood. And we want to really dive deep into this conversation and figure out, how do we get here? How do we move while we're here? And how do we get out of here and move on and achieve more and rebuild families and communities? And let's allow our men to be back in the space we deserve or we belong, and teaching one another how to be what we need to be, so that we can be successful as a community, as family, and as brothers and sisters with one another. With that said, I want to put out first a disclaimer, main disclaimer, especially for me. I like to put out, I ain't an expert of anything but my own perspective. And the same thing with my brothers here. We are masters of our own perspective. And we respect everyone else's. So we would love to see yours in the chat as we go through this conversation. But to start off, brothers, I want to read a definition from what's called social identity, because that's why I want to kind of start the conversation today. So social identity refers to an individual's self-concept derived from their membership in various social groups. It's how we define ourselves based off of group affiliations such as nationality, race, ethnicity, gender, or profession. I would even go further and say some of our collegiate organizations and Greek organizations, fraternities and sororities. This sense of belonging to a group shapes our behaviors, attitudes, and our perceptions of the world. With that said, my hit the first question today, which is, what role does identity play in social harmony in a diverse society? If you're talking, Ro, you muted. Oh, okay.
I will say, come back to me.
I'm sorry. Why my brothers are pondering on this question? We did not recognize the chat like we normally do. So if I'm gonna go ahead and greet the chat while everybody is getting together. So first off, welcome Sister Nick D, Lisa Keys, Crystal Everett, His Divine Appointment, the Unk with the Funk, of course. Who else we have in here? We have Honeybee Fly, Miss Charlotte Jordan, and Miss Adrian Artist. If you're in the chat or if you're on social media, go ahead and leave a comment so we can recognize you. And thank y'all all for being here. Y'all ready to jump at it?
Yeah, I'll take a stab. Just a stab. See, these are some of these topics where you want to, I don't know, you kind of walk slow into it, because it could be, it's diverse. Diversity can be divisive at the same time. So when you think about identity, some people may feel that their identity is in question, that their identity is under attack, whereas it may not be, but it may, that's what they presume by the way they have seen some people treated or some people respond to certain things. So it to me, it plays a strong role, but I think that because people, most of the time when people think identity is all about me and less about you. So I think it could be divisive if you allow that, but if you take it for what it should be, you will honor and respect each and every person's sense of diversity and what they bring to the table, rather than allowing it to separate you.
All right. So here's my stab at it. So here I saw three words that jumped out to me when I looked at this question. What role does identity play in social harmony in a diverse society? So I'm looking at it right here. When I say identity, I'm thinking about self, an individual. So my identity up here, I could be wrong. Up here, I got my identity. Coach has his identity. Gaddy has his identity. Roland has his identity. Right. So we have four different identities. So if you're up here, we looking at the Hearts of Men podcast tonight. You know what I mean? If we all get along up here and play nice, there'll be some social harmony go up here. Gaddy say something slick to Roland, it's going to be something different. You know what I'm saying? So in order for this show to be somewhat of a success, we need to have that social harmony in order for it to be effective. And then we look at the diverse society. When I'm talking about society, we're looking at us, we're looking at the audience, we're looking at anybody who may watch this broadcast, whether it be Facebook, YouTube, whatever like this. So what role does identity play in social harmony? Everybody's identity plays an individual role in the overall society harmony. So when I go back to society harmony, when I go back to the social harmony piece, and I go back to looking at us four men as the panel, I look at it as it plays a big part, because if someone up here has a bad or a negative identity about themselves or demeanor or something like that, I think it can destroy the overall social harmony that goes along within this panel. And I'm just using a panel, but I think it can be extrapolated out to like a larger society or larger group of people. So that's my stab at this question right there.
So yes, um, when we start looking at identity, like everybody heard, it's broken down into several categories, right? You have obviously your gender, your ethnicity, your education, socioeconomic status, like a number of different things. And it is a natural inclination for humans to segregate. It's just by virtue of what it is. So if we drop everybody into a group of people, eventually you're going to flock to people who kind of harmonize, ideally, with your identity, hoping that harmony exists there first. If harmony can exist there first, then we can branch out into the other sects, sects, for all of y'all challenge people, hearing challenge people. Then we can branch out. So when we look at how your identity plays a role in the social harmony, it plays a huge role, because most people view themselves through the lens of their identity. Most people do everything through the lens of their identity. They see themselves as their sex or their gender first before anything else, even in the midst of trying to pursue Christ. It's like your gender or your ethnicity first in Christ. And so, even when you look at the scriptures, you will read it through the lens of your associated identity first, then you will digest the word through that. So, when we start looking at social harmony, sure, your identity plays a huge role in it, especially the more diversity that kind of finds its way into society. And so now we start adding other aspects to choose from, more different choices that you can kind of factor in with your identity. And then I get to divide sex into 7 different categories instead of just 2. I get to divide ethnicity into 10 different categories instead of 4. Right. So now you get into a lot of different options, and options, believe it or not, to a human creates confusion. The more options you got, the more confused you get. And eventually you'll get to the point to where you start wanting somebody to tell you which is the best way to go. And that's where a lot of confusion comes from.
Whew, man, y'all brought out a lot. When I pondered on this question, what role does identity play in social harmony in a diverse society? I initially went right where you went, Ro, with respecting the diversity. I think the role that it plays in the social harmony is when it's when you move out of the respect and move into the appreciation. because as you can see, like we live in a culture where a lot of when we're talking about just ethnicities and cultures and stuff like that, there's a mesh, and it kind of seems like, we say we're westernized. What westernized means that we kind of leave behind the self-identity and we branch into a culture of whatever that looks like on the West, right? However women act on the West, men act on the West. We social media plays a heavy part in what we do. We love our American football over what we call foosball, right? Over soccer. But we look at these constructs and we say, well, you have to be like this. You don't do this. What you mean you don't believe in this? What you mean you have a culture and your women don't do this? And what do you mean your men treat their women like, instead of appreciating the diversity, appreciating the differences? Because I do agree, but once we start telling people to assimilate, that's what creates options. So it's like, I have to be this, or I have to be this, or I have to be this, or I have to be this. No, you just be you. You can be who you are now. If you find yourself taking a liking over here, or sometimes, marriages and stuff like that cause people to blend cultures or what have you. But I don't think necessarily there has to be option. Like, I am who I am. I identify how I identify, and I believe what I believe. It don't mean that because someone who's Muslim comes to the panel, that became an option for me now. I just appreciate them.
See, I think that we may twist it in our minds because we may think that it means that we have to come and be the same. We have to have sameness. It doesn't mean sameness. It means that we have shared values. So we share the value of respect. We share the value of dignity, of freedom, and things like that, versus looking at it like, okay, because you're this, you don't deserve that. No, in spite of everything you are, we share these values. So we have common ground to talk about, to get along, to lift one another up.
Go ahead. I have some questions and some comments, and I'm going to be looking for some feedback. One of the things that Gaddy talked about was respecting diversity, and you mentioned Roland at the same time. So what do you mean by respecting diversity, right? And then you also were talking about, so here's where I'm going with this. If we're talking about diversity, the only way that someone knows that I'm different, that all four of us are different or diverse, is if I let someone know, or someone may see something in me. They may see me limp and they may assume that I'm handicapped, right? So that means I'm in a different category. I'm handicapped, right? So, but in order to have diversity, don't you have to identify or label people who are diverse? And then in labeling, are you creating more division? So I don't know what my question is, but I am trying to understand a little bit more about their respect and diversity, especially as we move forward with this conversation, because just so I have a better understanding about it. Like I said, I don't know what my question is, but these are just some comments. It's kind of like I said, you said talking about respect and diversity, but in order, it seems like, to have diversity, you have to label people, and you have to try to get these labeled people to come together in harmony. But at the same time, when you label people, doesn't that create more division?
And then once Coach go, we'll unpack that a little bit more. I appreciate that.
No, that's kind of like where I was going. So I think we need to unpack that now.
Okay. So I think so. The first thing when we talk about social identity, right? I don't label you. You identify you, right? And however you come, now we can start talking about respect, right? Because you said we got four brothers here, and we might have four different identities, right? You may identify yourself based upon your gender. So you're man first, then you whatever else, right? Coach identifies himself, right? And I'm just being funny. We call him Coach, so he identifies himself by his profession. Roland, I may identify himself. I don't know. I would say what we say. You said race. We say race. He might say I'm black. I'm African American. I'm this first, whatever. So we all have a different social identity. That's how we present ourselves to the world. Now, based upon that, I don't think that has to create a division. But as Roland brought up earlier, it can cause division. I used to always say, like, I don't get mad off of prejudices, right, as much as I do off of racism, because I think as long as you have such a diverse society, there's going to be some stereotypes and some prejudices, right? I don't date this group of people because I see them doing this, and this, whatever, right? That exists. But respecting that diversity means you identify as man first, you walk like this, you talk like this, and this is how you behave because you see yourself first as a man, as a coach. He's always apt to teach. He walks around with his thesaurus in his left hand and his Bible in his right. I'm just bad, but I respect that. I'm not gonna walk around with my thesaurus. I might have a Bible app instead of holding the Bible in my other hand, right? But I respect that's how he comes forth, and so forth and so forth. Y'all want to add anything?
So I, for one, appreciate that question, and here's why. Because like I said previously, options create confusion. And if you pay close attention, options continue to expand as time progresses on. And so when we have these options, which, believe it or not, has given us the choice to be who we want to be and identify however we want to identify, that exacerbate an already present problem. So it's not that, in my opinion, social harmony is not achievable, but it's just like singing. You got to get really good at your whatever you sing first. So if you're an alto, you got to be good at being an alto first before you can blend with the choir, so forth and so on. It's the exact same thing, no different. But when you got these 10 different variations of identities that are trying to harmonize together, that makes it more problematic. And then going back to, like, I like Garfield's like question statement or statement question, how we're going to pose it, right? I like it because I agree with what he is saying just from the standpoint of just trying to understand, right? If you're trying to understand how to achieve harmony, then there's some things you need to understand within the scope of establishing harmony and maintaining it. And the first thing that you have to understand, kind of like what I said first, is that you have to find harmony within your own identity group, your in group. So now your in group can harmonize. Now you can be better for the larger group. But if you can't harmonize within your in group, then what does it look like you attempting to harmonize outside of your in group, even though it happens anyway? So some people will leave their perceived in group and go to an out group and then attempt to harmonize with them, thinking that they're achieving harmony, but the only thing they're achieving is acceptance. So I think that is another thing to consider within the space. Again, the focus is to the question, is harmony in a diverse society, not identity. And we've turned it and we made it about identity and not harmony. That's why I started the way I started in the beginning, because I wanted us to understand collectively the reason why harmony is so hard to attain is because we're struggling with identity.
They cleared it up. They made, yeah, I get that. I get that.
No matter where I go, people gonna think of me as either a black man of some sort, whether it be Middle Eastern or whatever. They gonna see me as quote unquote black man because that's what society has deemed darker hued people to be, and depending on where they're from. Now, when it comes to the diversity aspect and the harmonization of us as a group, I think when you're in a group, the groups of the same don't harmonize because they're the same. You harmonize with others so that you can make a the right sound. And when I want you to identify me as such, I have zero problem with that, because I want you to respect where I come from, respect what I've been through, respect what I bring to the table. Now, if you try to ignore that, that's where the problem comes in, because I don't see color, I don't see sex. When I walked through the door, you saw color. When I talked, you saw sex. If I walked in as a man and I had on a wig, you would see that as a problem. So we do see these things, and what we try to do is we try to play nice and act as if we don't see them. Whereas if a Jewish person and a Polish person came in, I'm not ignoring who they are. I'm trying to learn who they are so I can understand them a little better. That way we can realize that you're more than just that. And now we have commonalities that bring us together so that we can harmonize. Because when you bring what you bring to the table from your perspective, and I bring what mine is from my perspective, now we see that, man, we're more alike than we are different.
I would say this. When I look at harmony in a social concept of it, right, in a social aspect of it, I don't look at harmony as the absence of friction, so to say, right? Men and women can have differences of opinion, but the harmony is the ability to work out the differences, the ability to have the conversations, right? But that also comes with understanding that she's woman and I'm man. I understand she's going to take some things a little differently than I'm going to take it, right? I might hear things differently than the way she hears it, like that. So I'm looking at that. Understanding plays a part in that harmony, right? Do I have to always understand everybody's culture per se? Maybe not everybody's, right? But the harmony part comes in and it's just for me, is when I'm not trying to hold you up because of your identity, right? I'm not trying to deprive you of access to something, right? Or you can't shop at my store. I won't hire you because you identify like this. Stuff like that. To me, that's non-harmonious, right? But true harmony, I think, is where it's just, even if you live in your own sect, Coach, I think you brought up earlier that when you said we have the desire, and I don't know if you used the word desire, but the desire to group. Once we self-identify, we group with like-minded. I don't know about y'all, but when I went to basic, I sure enough did look for the first bit of melanin to cling to, right? It was just a comfortable space for me because I feel like I know what's going to play out here better. There's no fear of unknown. I know what I can say around them. I know how I can act around them. But the ability to separate but still exist together. If any of that made sense. You got something? I'm waiting for. Hey, I'll be waiting for Uncle the question.
My wheels is going over here.
Yes,
and
sir.
I'm just soaking it in. But I ain't ready to go yet. I'm waiting on the next question. The only reason, because we've been here for 30 minutes. And that's the only reason that I'm not going to add to. But
Fair enough.
Fair enough. It don't feel like it.
It don't.
It don't. But for the sake, I want to address this question. See if you brothers had anything to add. Sister Verlene McCoy, good evening. She said, what if you have come to terms that you have an identity, but you are shunned because of it?
See, for me, that depends on what that identity is.
Right.
Sometimes people have some identities and you shun because you have attached yourself to a negative or a horrible identity. I'm just saying. I'm not saying this is you, Miss McCoy. I know this ain't you. I'm just saying in general. But I know there are some people who have said that, this is who I am. and they have been shunned for, and rightfully so. There are some people who are in, let's say, they're in the world's oldest profession, and their families have shunned them because of it. That's their identity. That's how they identify it. So it all depends. To me, at the end of the day, it all depends on what that identity that you have is. But at the end of the day, if you shunned and they don't like your identity, then that's on them. But
See, but does that not speak to more or less not just the identity, but we don't have shared values? That speaks to the values part, because you can say all day that you identify as a Rottweiler, and I'm looking at you like, okay. And I understand that at the end of the day, you are a Rottweiler, but you identify that, that's on you. We don't have shared values. You want to get out the dog bowl and pee on the doggone fire hydrant. So we don't share values. So there can be no harmony there, because we really don't have anything to talk about.
well, you will get shunned, Roland, if you start identifying as a Rottweiler and talking when you start peeing on the fire hydrant.
Because
I'm
of the
ashamed.
value part. Definitely.
I don't know if you get shunned. I think you get videotaped.
He go viral.
Right.
You go viral. But see, avoiding the extremes of this question, I think this
Okay.
question is a really good question.
I do
Because
too.
You're absolutely right. The extremes are easy to talk about, but what if they're not so extreme?
Mm.
See, that's the point I was trying to make earlier, right? When we're talking about this thing called harmony. And sure, rolling to your point, I got it, but no one ever said the harmony is everybody trying to sing the same language. It's coming to the point to where we can sing at different notes we can sing at different octaves for a particular note, and it makes a sweet sound. So that does not mean that your identity is not accepted, that you're not neglected, but it's not the most important thing in the music either. That's the other part. And so sometimes what we sound like is I want my identity to be the most important thing when it comes down to the song that we're singing. Well, whatever happened to harmony, right? Are you trying to get the lead role, or are you trying to harmonize with the choir? Because sometimes, like y'all remember New Edition? Johnny Gill in New Edition. Johnny Gill ain't had no business singing with New Edition, and y'all know that. You can
Or
hear him
dancing.
over everybody. Well, yeah. Now, I'm not saying the brother can't sing. The brother can sing. Like, he was the best, in my opinion. He was the best vocalist in the group. But when they attempt to harmonize, you can easily pick out his voice. So I think a lot of times that's what you're hearing when it comes down to this idea of harmony, because just by virtue of, I don't have to sing the same note that you sing. Well, that's true. But at the end of the day, your note don't have to be louder than everybody else's either. And I think that's the thing that creates harmony. It's like, can I have an identity and be humble while having that identity at the same time? Right? Does that mean that I play second fiddle to your identity, regardless of whatever it looks like? So that's kind of like the point that I was making.
I love it. I love it. I hope we satisfied the question. Can we jump to the next question? Because I think this going to kind of roll us in a little bit, right? When we're talking about identity. So what level of influence should government have in our social identities? And I'm gonna kind of give my opinion on off the top, because Coach said something earlier, and I think it's more options when options are presented. And that's when I look at government, I look at least when I look at our social construct today, I feel like government has opened up the doors for options by getting involved. And so that to me created more confusion. So, right. And that's just right along with what you said. But I feel like that's when the government got involved, that's when I started feeling like identity became optional. Like, here's all these different options. Pick one.
I think when government got into dictating who was who, it was the start of divide and conquer. Because now I separate you by race, I separate you by religion, I separate you. You know, I make up a color and say that's you, and I call these people that color. Those are yellow people. So it was a divide and conquer thing meant for the government to succeed in be in control over the masses rather than us coming together harmonizing. So what role should the government have? Well, the government does what it does because it's supposed to. Because if we were to look, the scriptures talk about the separation of people. Have zero problem with that. But because you identify with your clan, your whomever, your tribe or whatever, but and people respected that. You didn't have to say, okay, well, we not gonna respect this because there was not one over the other. Hey, that's just who you are. And when it comes to the government now, they decide who you are, and you put it on the census, and you put it on your school paperwork and job paperwork. So now they say, okay, we don't have enough of these folks, or we don't have enough of those folks. So now there becomes some type of pecking order to where people think that this group is better than that group, rather than saying, man, let's, what old boy say in the movie, you're supposed to be happy, in centers. So I don't know. I don't think the government should have a role in it because I think the government is a crooked organization, but that's and that and a dollar buy me a cup of coffee.
I'm not going to disagree with what Roland said, but what I want to add to is if I was to give them jokers a role, I think it would be to protect my identity. And I don't know the how though. I don't know the how. But if I want to identify as a Rottweiler, then I want that protected. I don't know why. I'm just saying because Roland brought up the Rottweiler earlier. So it's just like if I want to identify whatever it is, I just want it to be protected. Just leave me alone and just let me be a Rottweiler as long as I'm not hurting or affecting anybody else. Now, the other part of that is I don't think that they should be able to define or dictate what those identities are. You know what I'm saying? So I think that I should be able to identify with what I identify as, and then the government should be able to just help me protect my identity without trying to dictate or define what that identity is. And that could open up so many different rabbit holes, but I'll digress.
Very unpopular opinion coming. They have a huge responsibility. They should. It's called unification. Everybody who lives in this country is governed by the government. That's what it means. They have a responsibility to govern. So under the umbrella, and I'm not saying that it's the highest level, but under the umbrella of government, they have a responsibility to unify everybody as United States citizens. It is what it is. I don't care how you feel about it. It is what it is. If you got to pay taxes every year, right? If you have to answer to the man, if you drive down the street and get pulled over, license registration plate, and you do that right there, you are under their governing authority. That's and again, we can argue that all day long. That's scripture though. So they have a responsibility. What level of responsibility? Well, I think we can all agree that there have been some, left and right limits that may have been pushed, right? But they have a level of responsibility. They should have a level of responsibility. And that level of responsibility is unification, not dictatorship, not manipulation or anything of that nature. We're supposed to be unified under the governing body. That is what they should. Now, again, we're not going to balance and toss straws about should and do. Those two totally different things. But should, absolutely, they should have it.
And that's why I kind of started with what Roland said. But I get what you're saying too. And that's kind of how I feel is that, or what I think is because, like you said, I pay taxes, and I'm forced to pay taxes every single year. Every single time I swipe my debit card or my credit card or go buy a pack of Skittles from the convenience store, I got to pay taxes. You know what I'm saying? And so they should be freaking have certain level of influence. Now, it should be appropriate and it should be accurate and it should be effective. And it is for some people. But what I'm saying is, if we are in a system Just like if I'm in the military and you force me to have a sergeant major, I expect him to do his job because he in charge of me. I expect my supervisor to do their job. I expect the government to do their job because I have to pay taxes. And good, bad, or indifferent, they are the governing authority.
I don't disagree with anything that
I
was
would like
just
to know the counter option if we don't.
say again.
Oh no, it may be for another show.
Oh.
I want to steer the conversation off.
No, that's fine. I was listening to Coach and Unc. I would say that there's some level of influence that belongs there, but by influence, I think it's a true and open influence they should have. What I mean by that is we shouldn't have tainted history. I get it, the victors writes the history, so they paint themselves in the light that they paint. But if I am represented, or my group, my identity group is represented here, history should be true concerning us.
But aren't we getting into what level of influence do the government have?
Well, should.
But if you're saying should, then we're talking idealistically. If you
Yeah.
say do, you're talking what is current.
Correct. And so I don't think that information concerning identity in this country is true and open. I believe that the more you do history, you read and research history on your own, it don't always align with what was put in the textbooks and what's being pushed and what's relatively available to the people. And so we always seem like we have a version of a story, but is it always telling the truth on identity? And this is why even if you identify Roland, say everywhere he goes, somebody's going to see him as some sort of black. But you got black people in this country who have two different ideologies on the black community based upon the information which was exposed to them. Well, all the information concerning us should be available. All the information concerning all Asian Americans should be available, because I think that keeps us in that space to where I can stay true to my identity and I'm not trying to be nothing else, because I can gain true pride in who I am or who I identify to be. But I also believe I'm not gonna get into I was about to get into the do, so you almost got me there.
That's if you identify as a black man.
But can you identify something that they didn't tell you you are?
Huh?
If they have influence, you got to identify with one of their blocks. Check this. But when I went to court a couple of weeks ago, there was this block, this block, this block. You got it, and it says you must check one, and there was no other. So if you don't identify with one of these, we got a problem, because these are what we say you are. You better pick one or else.
Right.
But we're talking personal identity, not social identity.
That's personal identity. What you
Right,
identify.
you're talking personal identity. The question is on social identity.
And social identity, we looking at certain things of sex and religion and so forth and so on. Because I think that color for us is a social thing. Because we are color. We ain't Polish from Poland. We ain't German from Germany. We're color. Or you African American, or you this. So they automatically push that narrative.
Godfrey, you're about to say something. Go ahead.
I'm trying to figure out. I think for me, I need to understand what's an example of a social identity. Maybe that's where, because I know Roland has said something, and I thought I had a response for it, but then you said that there was more of a personal identity. So if someone could, kind of share what's an example of a social identity. Is that like identifying as like African American, Native American, is that will be considered a social identity?
It is a identity. It is a thing. I'll say it that way. It is a thing that we collect under in a joint manner. Can we say African American as a social identity? Sure, but it's not just one person. It's everybody who claims African American. Can I say male as a social identity? Sure, but it's every male, regardless of ethnicity now. So that's what I'm saying. When we start talking about, and I love Nick D's question, when we start talking about the level of influence should the government have in social identity, that's why I say it should be. It should be. And again, should be, not do, because I'm talking idealistic. It should be according to said law, because ideally the law is responsible for keeping good order and conduct. So therefore, socially, you feel safe. Therefore, socially, you are protected under the law. Again, should, not do. That's the point that I'm making here.
So theoretically, if it was done right, this
What does
is,
that look like? Yeah.
there we go. All right, I get it.
And we can highlight Nick D's question as well, because I like it, and y'all could talk about that in the chat as well, because our influence and responsibility is the same thing in this regard. And no, and I mean, when you say should they have, it kind of, I guess it kind of can guide towards responsibility, because you said should, right? Because, and that's what the question states. So it can, but it's not necessarily that they are responsible for a role in social identity, but because they are the governing body, should they have a role, and what should that look like? So that's kind of where is that. But at least for the way I'm looking at it, I think as soon as you put should, it kind of leads into the idea that there's a responsibility there.
I'd say yes. And here's why. Does the responsibility of fatherhood come with influence?
Right. That's a real one.
I say yes, because all responsibility should have. It doesn't. If you're showing responsibility for something, you have influence over it. So yes.
Now, when you say it that way, are we saying that everyone with influence has responsibility? That's a different question, and that might derail. I don't even know if I want to go there.
I don't think so. I don't think that everybody that has influence has responsibility. I think people put responsibility on people with influence sometimes. And that's why sometimes you will see people who have influence, like athletes and stuff like that, and rappers and stuff, and whoever, but they will have them being spokesmen or spokesperson for certain things, and they probably not necessarily the best people for that. But because they have influence, sometimes people automatically give them responsibility. But I don't think that
I agree with what you're saying there, that they may not be ready for that responsibility, but simply by them having influence over, you have a responsibility, even though you may not be up to the task. And
I don't agree with that.
If you go to court and because you may have told somebody to do something, well, I didn't tell, I said they could do it, this, that, and other, but you have a responsibility to do things a certain way. And once you neglect to do that, you're responsible for that in court.
So, and I hope I'm not taking this way off. So when we look at a lot of people, look at the celebrities and athletes and stuff, they have a lot of influence. So are we saying that, you know what I mean, those guys have responsibility, like they should be responsible? You know what I mean? Because they have the influence, that automatically comes with responsibility. You got a 23-year-old, somebody worth $100 million, they have the influence, and we're saying that this person has a responsibility because they have the influence.
I think you should, but does it? Like I said, like when Charles Barkley spit on a little girl, and then he went on the he spit on, and then he went on the commercial or whatever. He said, "I am not a role model. By virtue of your job, your position, your status, you're a role model to somebody, even if unknowingly. So your responsibility to act accordingly. That's why they start putting in the contract. If you act outside of what we deem, then we take money because you're responsible even when you aren't on the court."
See, so I understand. I've been having this argument. I feel like my entire adulthood life, but that's when identity is important, right? I know, right? We left, but
No, what Roland just said described exactly what I said earlier. That contract is a governing body according to the job that he's doing.
But because he plays basketball, we made him famous because we watch. We poured our money into.
Well, go put the trash out instead.
So
it's the contract. It's the
contract is the governing body for them. Yes.
Okay, because now I just went to a rapper, right? For I ain't gonna say who she is, but right. So she has a lot of influence, and is not necessarily a nice person. Is not necessarily wearing appropriate things. Not necessarily dressing how we would want our young women to be growing up. They're not necessarily that role model, but they have a lot of influence, and they're not under those contracts as being those good people. They make their money off of being ratchet and being raunchy and being overly sexual and stuff like that. So what about those people? So that's why I don't necessarily I understand the influence and the responsibility, but I don't necessarily think that it's I don't know if that person should, you know what I'm saying?
I mean, ideally, right? So back to what Coach said earlier, when you're talking about
maybe I'm
ideally,
talking about the minority and or the exception, and maybe that's
and ideally, I hope everybody that puts themselves on TV that's famous, that has a big name, takes on a responsibility to the people that are watching. But they have a responsibility to their pockets more than they do to what my kid thinks about them. So I feel like I have the heavier weight of responsibility when it comes to my household.
Yes,
I agree. I agree with that.
And so even when we talk about identity, I have a responsibility to myself, to my social construct. This part of my identity is I'm a panelist on the Hearts of Men podcast. And if I go and I branch out and do something else, it's going to bring some type of light or image to what we do here. So I have a responsibility to my social construct, to my social identity as a panelist at the Hearts of Men. We didn't sign a contract, but
you said something. Oh,
yeah. But we didn't sign a contract. But my responsibility, regardless of what they're pushing out there, if I go out there and I start acting like so-and-so and so-and-so, and that's not what we look like here and what we're about here, then I just did a disservice to this body, regardless of what Charles Barkley did. You see, that's how I'm looking at it. Hey, I got thumbs up. We ready to roll. Ooh, we are averaging about 27 minutes per question. All right. So next question, brothers. How does the global political climate affect social structures such as successes and disparity?
I'll start this one off. What's his name? Carl von Clausewitz stated that war is simply an extension of political intercourse by some other means. And so what does that mean? Every war that we've ever participated in had a political undertone. We just don't go to war just because we want to go to war. So now, when you look at global politics, you look at the policies that we're looking to impose on other countries, and we do it all the time. There is a struggle right now between, who is it? Taiwan, Philippines. I'm sorry, between the Philippines, and it's all about where a line is drawn. Simply because if that line is drawn this right, it's a whole lot of oil that sit right up in there. And so China said, "Well, push it over this way. We're gonna keep pushing the envelope this way." And the United States said, "Now what we do is we have a treaty, and that treaty is, in essence, we would defend those, right?" So what does all of that really mean? That means at the end of the day, when you start looking at global politics is all about seeing how far to in a nutshell. And I'm just, summing it up as best I possibly can, not to try to make it over political, and definitely not over policies, right? But to push as far as we can go without going into a what we tend to call a war, a crisis status, right? Because that's where you look at the continuum of politics, and you have competition on one end, and the other end is crisis. So it's not by happenstance; it's called competition over here, right? We compete over here just to see, and ideally, we want us to partner. We want us to get along, things of that nature. But it's not always possible. So you get certain things like tariffs and things of that nature. But who do those things affect in the long run? Ultimately, it affects the end user. So in the midst of this global political, and I'll call it gameism, right? Ultimately, it's going to affect you, the consumer, you, the father, you, the mother, you, the community, things of that nature. Why? Because it's going to increase the price of this, and so forth and so on. And so when we look at how does the global political climate affect social constructs, because you look at those different social structures, if you will, and where is the preponderance of the marginalized communities existing at? How are they making it? Like when you look at certain things that happen, what crisis did they spend in them? Oh yeah, by the way, it may trigger this policy that needs to happen so I can take care of these people. And I just ultimately say it because we need the votes. We need the vote. So if I take care of you, that almost ensure that I get your vote. So pay close attention to how these successes and disparities actually take place. Those people who are fluent, they don't worry about tariffs. Those people who are like what they call middle class, the tariffs hit you hard. Those people who are lower class, it hits them, but they're getting subsidies from the government anyway. So in essence, it's eating up in their subsidies. And so in essence, what's going to end up happening if it becomes that egregious, they just increase it because the middle class gonna pay for it anyway.
Yeah, you said a lot in there. And if I'm looking at some social structures, you just started talking about one of them. That's the family. I look at how things are right now. I look at the family, I look at the political climate. I look at how families have been torn apart based off of posting a particular presidential candidate on social media. And now they're outcast, and nobody want them to say anything at Thanksgiving table anymore. And then I also look back. I remember when 9/11 happened, and regardless of what happened, everybody in this country, it seems like we had a common enemy. And it seems like everybody spoke to each other. It just seems like everybody was just nicer. It seems like the overall climate of the country. And I know that there were some political things that got adjusted, or like Coach was talking about, a lot of times there's an undertone of some political thing before the actual war happens and stuff like this. And I definitely agree with that as well. But I just think that, when you're looking at the political climate, how things were after 9/11 when it came to politics and stuff like this, regardless of what side you was on, most people wanted to go kick some butt. You know what I mean? After 9/11. But and I think, and like I said, I'm looking at how things are right now and the political climate is now. And I think that all of those things can affect something that's at the lowest level, the family structures and how we deal and interact with each other on a social basis, on social media and all these other different things. You know, who's on our team and who's not on our team. You know, the whole thing about division and stuff like that. So that's where I want to pause right there. But I just find this a very interesting question. I am very much so forward to looking to hear what Roland got to say about this.
I think it's twofold. I think in some ways it may be shown to help. Oh, we have better opportunities when it comes to technology. We're adding this, we're adding that. And I think those sometimes can be seen as smoke screens because of what they're doing. As Coach said, like, yeah, it looks good on with the tariffs and everything, but the wealth gap is growing rather than coming closer together. And those same ones that was paying for it before are paying for it even more now. So we saw that in Vietnam. In Vietnam, we all came together. We got one common enemy, and they out there shooting at Charlie. I don't know if I can say that. Okay, we pew-pewing at Charlie, and everybody coming together. But then when some of us came back home, now I'm just another whatever. Can't get a job, can't live where I want. So the government supposedly helped me over here, supposedly looking out for me, and I, you know, it's always work at the post office, they say. But that's why when you look at the global political climate, you got to say, okay, how does this affect me and mine? Because I don't have Elon's money. I don't have Jay-Z's money. So is it going to affect me the same as these people that are encouraging me? Oh, vote over here, dancing, twerking, vote for this person, or doing whatever, vote for that person. Which one of these people are looking out for me? Neither one of them. They both looking out for self, trying to get control over you. So how it's going to affect the social structures, I think it's going to continue to be the same until we see that we need to actually come together rather than keep talking about things that are separating us.
Right. I'm with Lisa on this one. She said it affects our economy at large. It's a domino effect. I'm there with it because I started paying attention to politics a little young. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. But as far as I can remember paying attention to politics, every global issue, no matter what it was, whether it was about Africa, whether it was about China, whether it was about oil, whether it was about this, whether it's about that, always turned out to affect our pockets. It always ended up flipping the economy upside down. It don't matter what it was. You know, we got done with the Iraqi war, and we ain't seen gas below 210 yet, right? But that's what we blamed. We blamed 9/11. You know, when we go into war over in the Middle East, they trying to keep the oil from us. Right? They doing this. They got what, I don't know how many different excuses we had. I think we was down to like 14 at the end, but it affect our pockets. From that day forth, it cost us almost double than what it cost us in the 90s to get gas. Now, by us, it wasn't me. I wasn't driving in the 90s. I was all of 15 when 2000 hit. But I ride right there with it. It affects our pockets. It affects our ability to live life the way we've become accustomed. We spend about 5-10 years getting accustomed to an economy and enjoying the economy when our income finally catches up. And then another crisis hit. COVID sent everything through the roof, right? They said we had to stop all the ships from importing goods and stop them on the water. Affected billions of goods. And we haven't seen prices drop since. So that's why I look at with it. And in return, it affects. I think Coach said it, or I think it was Coach that said, or Roland that said it. It affects so to the point to where the wealth gap is expanding. Now, I understand what the tariffs are supposed to do because I'm with you, Coach. I understand what they're supposed to do. You're supposed to entice the American companies that are abroad to come back to America, right? So that we can have that infrastructure here, that business here, right? And it brings more money to us, to our government. I get that, and then it's still going to affect the consumer at the end, whether good or bad. But all they got to do when the tariffs go up, all they got to do is raise the prices so that it doesn't affect their pockets. And that's an easy game to play. So that's why I'm at on that one. Y'all got any alibis?
I would just ask something for people to consider, not necessarily answer. Is all of this widening the wealth gap, or are we just simply aware of it now? Just something to consider.
I mean, that is a good question. We do have more millionaires than ever, and of course, all our old millionaires are now billionaires.
And we know not near one of them, so it didn't affect us back then either.
Touche.
I mean, I don't know how far I'm gonna go with this. I ain't gonna go too far, but with tariffs and all these other things, it seems like it would be a lot more opportunity for people to buy in home, buy from your local homeboy, buy from your local food market, buy a lot more things locally,
But how
It's
many
just my
local
thought.
markets
Huh?
and stuff? Like, how many local markets are there? Because Walmart came and put mom and pops out of business. Walmart got Super Walmart, neighborhood Walmart, Target, Super Target, put Kmart out of business, put Sears out of business. So it's like, okay, certain families just take over. They don't care about you. They don't care about you. They're gonna give you $6 an hour, but they don't care about you. And then you're gonna say, well, I got a job. Yeah, you got a job work for them. They don't care about you. Now they got little things where somebody just stand there and watch you, and
Three people standing around while I'm over there working.
And that's a conversation of itself, because now that they've taken over most of the market, pretty much the entire super selling concept, they've taken it over. Now that the prices are going up, ain't nothing we can do because those mom and pops are gone. You're right. But
again, same thing. Did Walmart take over, or did the consumer shopping at Walmart? That's what I'm saying. It's the same thing, regardless of how we look at it. They can drop anything wherever they want to drop it at, but it's up to you to go shop there.
But that's what I'm saying. We gave them the power because their prices were cheap and all those other excuses. We can go there and get everything we need, whatever our excuse was. We gave them that power. We shopped there. We stopped shopping at Sears, like you brought up. We stopped shopping at JCPenney. We stopped shopping at the mom and pops. We, like, growing up in New York, I didn't know what a Family Dollar was. We just had 1,099 stores owned by somebody local, But now people from Staten Island drive all the way to Jersey to go to Walmart. They drive 20 minutes outside the city just to go to Walmart.
But this goes back to social identity. That's
exactly.
That's the point I'm saying. Like, we don't have harmony under the construct of our identity. So we will flock to anything that appears to benefit just me, this person, because that's the person I'm concerned with. I don't care about anybody else. I'm concerned about this person. So when this pops up and say, hey, we got them things that I know you're buying because we've been watching you, we've been gathering information off of you for the past 8, 9, 10 months. Them things you buy, they're right here and they're cheaper here. We have no allegiance to our own. There's the problem.
That's why you can say that. That's why the Chinese people got on social media when Louis Vuitton and all them people was talking about them purses and them tariffs and stuff. They say, look, we make them same things right here. You can get for $150. And people say, oh, it's about me. Well, I ain't got no allegiance to Louis, just like we really don't have allegiance to buying black. We don't have allegiance to buying American, because at the end of the day, when you look on the name on the tag, most of it say it's from somewhere else anyway. And you realize that you're being manipulated by whomever it is that's in control.
But it's twofold. But I can't just we can't just leave it because see, Lisa, Lisa, you all in my head now. It's twofold because when we get to own something, we want to charge our people top dollar for it, and then tell them that you're not loyal to your own people. You're not loyal to your own people by trying to get them by trying to make $1 million off of 5 people who shop in your store.
That could be twofold also, because I think sometimes Walmart has a big super center over here with a stockpile of things where they got it cheap, and mom and pop, they bought it and they gonna make 15 cents off of something. So they say, okay, I can't just give it away. So it's twofold. I understand what you're saying.
But that's kind of what Lisa kind of alluded to when she said they pay them having to pay more now, and they're getting less business. They have to increase their prices now. Those mom and pop
$300 haircuts though, bro.
And no, that's wild. That's wild. Yeah. I got some clippers in the bathroom. I'll be in the mirror in the morning.
I'll be give me the $8 haircut. I don't need all the extra stuff. I don't need that. I don't want to be in your chair for 3 hours.
Right down, Ransom, get you that $8 haircut.
The little neck tapes get to be expensive with them tariffs, bro.
Bro, they ain't that expensive. Hey, go to the back, get some toilet paper, like I used to do in the barracks. When I was in the barracks, we go get toilet paper.
Facts. Hey, and that army toilet paper too. That thing was tough. It didn't fall apart like Charmin. No, but you're right, and that's why we started off with social identity, right? Because when you start talking about loyalty to one another, at the end of the day, people do have more loyalty to Louis than they do. The world has identified me as Black or African American, but I identify as bougie. So I'm going to only wear Gucci. I'm only going to wear this, and I'm only going to wear that, and I'm only going to drive this. I'm only going to do that, and so my identity is about you telling me I look good. You telling me I'm riding around fancy. Your compliments. That's what I identify as bougie, and that's really what we're dealing with. There's some people who don't shop in Walmart because they dare not get their stuff from Target.
But that's not necessarily bougie. I think I identify without saying it that I'm a slave to the labels.
We know that, right? Keeping up with the Joneses all the time. We used to always use that term back in the day, keeping up with the Joneses. And that's what takes the loyalty from the mom and pops. All right. And you're absolutely right. I did know a millionaire that went to church with me. He owned like 4 or 5 businesses, African brother. Joker if he wasn't in church, he had on white t-shirt, some jeans, and some sandals coming out of a BMW. But our loyalty is to our image sometimes more than it is to our community. Whew. I think we're gonna make it. Let's roll to the next question. It's a good one. So historically, right? Because we're building to something. Historically, what effects do things such as war and recession, as we just talked about, and I think we kind of hit it a little bit, so you ain't got to stay there too long, have on a man's ability to provide and lead his family?
I'm going to go right to the positive with this. As someone who has went to war twice, I started investing when I went to war the first time. I'm just being honest. Now, I will say this. Did it cause me some issues in my marriage and stuff like this? Absolutely. So it probably cost me going to war and just part of it. I ain't going to say the Army cost me a marriage, but I will say that some of the things in the military, including war, did have an effect on it. But I will say from a financial point of view, just financially, war helped me. I was able to re-enlist when I was out there. Got a large chunk of money. It was tax-free. It was lump sum, all of that stuff. So I know there's definitely a negative side of all of this, and that's where I almost went But then I was like, let me twist it up a little bit. Let me start with the positive. So I would just say, some of the other things that I learned from war was how to be separated, how to be learn how to live with a bunch of other people. Some of the lessons that I was able to learn from just being at war and just being away, I was able to come back and teach those lessons, or still have some of those lessons that I'm able to provide and teach later on to my sons or whatever like that. So I will say that, in certain situations, I'm probably speaking as an outlier, but I think sometimes, at least in my situation, or at least from the perspective that I'm coming from, war can be can have some positive effects. Now, if you die at war, is a different story. But if you make it through and you come out on the other side, there can be a lot of lessons that's being learned from going through war. It can greatly benefit your family if you can actually get through and push through, those deployments and stuff like that.
I'm with you, but I think you tried to
Yeah.
set me up going with the positive. Because I think whenever we were deployed, your money jumped up a little bit, so you were able to take
Money
care of your
jumped
family
up.
financially better. But while at the same time, the loss of because we don't just
The
serve
connection.
where men are going to war. We serve where men and women are going to war. So that leaves children without one or both parents. So now that structure at home is lacking into some capacity, and that is where I want to go with it. I understand the positives with finances and things like that, but when it came to, I think war makes money. Y'all know that when they start the war, money about to get ramped up. Somebody's getting paid. Somebody getting paid after. Then you have your people. Hey, I'm gonna work overseas and I'm gonna get this tax-free money, and so forth and so on. So there are some positives for people that are looking for it certain way. But when it comes to the family structure, there outside of the monetary gain, there's not many positives in it because you lose a parent, you lose that structure, you lose that ability to see their face and talk to them on the daily. And back in the day, we had Skype and stuff like that, but it wasn't just a all the time thing. So, leading the family became, I was more comfortable overseas than I was coming back home. And I couldn't wait to leave because my mind was so ramped up. It's like, okay, we got to go. Now you're getting ready to go. Now you're gone. And then you come back and somebody complaining about this and complaining about that. That's how I saw it. And so it became a stressor for me to be back
Um,
Do it, coach.
y'all being nice.
Do it.
I'm looking at this question, and the key word to me is historically. I know we want to talk about our tenure when we were in the Army, but I think historically there are two things you got to consider. At one point in time, there was a draft that existed, and then later on, it became an all volunteer service. In the midst of the draft, no one knew who was getting drafted, so that put stress on the family for starters, right? Generally, ideally, back then, most families had one person working in the home, the husband. Husband get draft, go to war. Okay. Now the wife has to go and work. And that became the beginning of a major movement that we still see happen to this day. I'm not going to talk about it, but I think everybody understands what that is. And then when you, thanks, Robert. Then when you move into the volunteer service, sure, absolutely. We got men and women going to war. But here's the big thing that we're missing when it comes down to war. I know you say somebody's making money, but those are like the onesies and twosies behind the curtain. War costs money. Like, I don't think most people realize that a lot of the munitions that are sent well, I say it like this, strategically, that way. A lot of those munitions that are shot are leased. We don't pay for them until they pull the trigger. When they pull the trigger, money goes out the door. And I tell you, one in particular costs $1 million a round, and that's a Tomahawk missile. So at the end of the day, when you look at stuff like this, I think we're missing the big picture, because here's the issue. Money, a war is extremely expensive. And just like we talked about tariffs a few minutes ago, who do you think is going to have to pay for that? You. So yeah, we may get a little pay raise during that time. That's chicken feed. That's chicken feed. While you deploy, you get a little couple of extra dollars doing your deployment. Yeah, that's great. But guess what? While you're over there, everything else back at home just went up. So that little bit of extra money you made is going right to the store, going right to the gas station, going right to the daycare, all of that great stuff. So when we look at the effects that war and recession have on our ability to provide and protect, well, the first, I'm sorry, I'm so accustomed to them going together, y'all forgive me. To provide and lead, well, first and foremost, provide costs money. It costs resources. So that provisionary aspect that was once a thing, well, we probably got to scale back and do less outside the home, because I just can't afford to do that. You can't afford to do that, especially while I'm gone. Oh yeah, by the way, we're in 2 different time zones. So you need to be available when I have the ability to make a phone call. And let's just be honest, in the beginning of war, you have no idea when that's going to happen and how it's going to happen. Prior to us having the technology to make phone calls, it was snail mail. So you had to wait like a month to receive a letter from a soldier. Lead his family, huh? We ain't talked to dad in a whole month. How my daddy doing? I don't know. And the wife, she's scared because she don't know that latency in communication. There's no telling what's happening in between it. And then we ain't going to talk about them coming back home, because when they come back home, there's some disassociation that happened. They had to move on with life. And one of the first things they tell us when we come back, don't go back trying to assume who you were when you left, because they don't see you as that just yet. So now that man has to tiptoe around the house acting like a roommate just for a certain while. It's stress. It's hard. And again, remember, like I said, I put them together, provide and protect, because ideally from a identity perspective, men have been given that for years. So if I'm not providing, then you believe I can't protect.
Man, Coach, you saved me, because I was about to say you brothers are cheating. Yeah, taking the high road, because and the reason why I said that's cheating, y'all didn't lie about anything y'all said. The first thing I learned when I joined the Army, I represented 1% of the United States that was actively serving in uniform. 1%. That's what they told us. Right? Yeah, his divine appointment, she hitting all of them. She getting it. But as we look at the rest of the country, Coach is right. Yeah, that money that's being paid, those taxes we not paying while we over there, that $33 billion a year in contractors and weapons specialties, all this other stuff, it costs money to take all of our soft shells and turn them all into and gain a whole new fleet of up armored, right? Like, and somebody has to pay that. We're complaining about taxes now, how much is increased. We're paying for those 12 years we were over there. We're paying for it now. On top of everything else, I agree. But and I'm right there where you ended is where I was going to start at. If once my ability to provide is affected, it stunts my ability to lead. And then when you start talking about historically, and I just go back to Vietnam, because I talked to a Vietnam vet every day growing up. It's my daddy. Name was Timothy, hence the son of Timothy. That's why I took the name. But you listen to him talk. A lot of Vietnam veterans, when they came back, they had this stigma on them that they just wasn't right. They didn't have PTSD yet. They just wasn't right. So a lot of those guys, they come home from being drafted or however they got over there. They lost their job that they had. So their wives went to work while they were gone. Now they come back, their wives at work, and they can't get a job. To me, I already see where the problem lies when it comes to leadership now. Because for some reason, we have equated the ability to make money to leading the family. And so a lot of men are identified as good leaders, good providers, or good husbands or good mates based upon how much money they got, based upon how much money they make. And so once we've aligned those two as the same, I think once the money's affected, the leadership is affected, especially in today's society. But y'all got time to redeem yourself. I'll give y'all about 2 minutes. You know, I'm joking. I'm messing with y'all. Like I said what I said. Nah.
Like you had mentioned how your father
In the business.
Your father came home telling you this, that, and the other, while mine came home and was either hooked on that thing they call girl, that thing they call boy. See, and that splinters the family where you don't have the resources provided for these people to become come back into society and maintain or elevate their families. So that fractures the family structure, which fractures the community. So the harmony that we trying to speak of is one that we looking at like, what? It's not even a thing.
Whew. So I think if it's okay, I'll hold y'all just a couple minutes. I really want to get this last question. I want to hammer this last question out and go into our final thoughts. So the question is, how have governmental influences in recent years shaped the divide in our society?
I will start by saying this. I kind of skimmed over it earlier when I started talking about families and how some families have been destroyed just based off of the political atmosphere or the political aura that they may present, right? So if you present a certain aura, or if you say certain things, then you're automatically assigned to a certain group, whether that be red or whether that be blue, just based off how you act, based off certain things you say. And I think people have started trying to, actually that's irrelevant. So how has governmental influence in recent years shaped the divide in our society? I think just with some of the things and some of the propaganda and just some of the things that are being said on the news networks and just information that we receive and information that we see, I think it just caused a divide because now it's caused people to pick a side. You know what I mean? And they're saying that, hey, I'm on this side, and if you're not with me, then you're the enemy versus, you know, kind of like someone said, we got a whole lot more in common than we do differently. And I think at the end of the day, when we go back to that first question, we got this little small society of people right here, and we got 4 different identities. I think we all kind of want the same things. I think we want to be able to go to sleep at nighttime and be safe. I think we want to be able to earn a decent wage. I think we want to be able to retire comfortably. You know what I mean? So I think just like all 4 of us who have different identities kind of all want the same things. I think that when you have governmental influence that's negative, sometimes it may seem like that over the recent years, it has caused some divide. And I think that divide can be a negative thing, especially when it comes down to some of the families and that have been destroyed. I don't want to say it's destroyed because of the government influences, but I would say sometimes it's how people respond and what they choose to accept from the governmental influences. You muted.
I'm with you with the us versus them mentality that's being pushed. Whether because if you're not on the red side, you're not on the blue side, or you're against. It's like we can have commonalities and still disagree. We can disagree on certain things, but as a whole, do we see us moving together forward together? And that's what I think they push the narrative so that it splinters the groups and pushes us further apart. You can look at education. Education now is the okay, we're gonna take some things out of school. History ain't history like you were taught, or it was even wrong then, but it's not the history that you were taught. Certain curriculum has to get out, or else you won't get funding. When it came to whether or not you got the jab, oh, you stupid, you ain't getting the jab, you un-American. You like, because I don't want you to put this in me. Because the same thing, because I look at, and this is just me, I still remember reading about the Tuskegee experiment and things of that nature. So there's a trust factor in it for me. So, and then when us in the military, when we were in, we had to get the anthrax shot. And when we got it, I started having patches falling out in my head. And then when I was a medic, I say, okay, I ain't getting it, but I'm gonna write it down. And then as I'm writing it down and I'm not taking it, now my hair starts to grow back. They try to attribute it to something else. I say, no, it don't work like that. So the trust factor for some who have been misaligned when it comes to being on the right side of things, that trust factor goes out the door. So the influence shapes your mind to not just how you see where you are, you make where you are the big picture, which is not so. And unless you are an intelligent person to say, okay, my little grand scheme of things may not be the whole, whereas someone else may say, oh, well, this, no, everybody starts putting their little piece and saying, this is everything, when it's not. You make your picture bigger than the whole picture.
I think this is a very interesting question, and I'm right in line with everything you heard so far. I want to go back to the system itself, because the system as we know it to be works off of the concept of what we know to be bipartisanship, which ultimately is two groups of people, right, working together to agree, but these group of people they don't normally agree. Therefore, it makes bipartisanship more difficult. But here's the funny part for me is that, again, they're there to govern, which means that ultimately they're there to either interpret or continue to create law and policy. But if the law and policy is created to govern a group of people, then what are we disagreeing about? I will start my conversation there, because if we're not disagreeing about the truth, I'll start there. If we can clearly identify what is true, and we understand that assumptions are generated based upon some version of what is true at some particular point in time, or a combination of two concepts put together that can equate to what is true, then bipartisanship has to be not based upon our ability to agree or disagree about the truth. It has to be based on our ability to gain or maintain power. So when we look at it from that perspective, now we can understand everything that these gentlemen just talked about. Why? Because moving forward, it helps me to understand that the influences in recent years were shaped to divide our society through misinformation campaign, telling untruths, and convincing you that they're here to help you, when in all actuality, they're helping themselves by helping you a little bit. So I'm gonna help you just a little bit, but in the long run, you're gonna help me and don't even realize it. And I give you a very small example I've been talking about for a very long time. I'm going to increase the child tax credit. Why am I increasing the child tax credit? Because that convinces you that you should have more children so you can get more child tax credit at the end of the year. And you may have a couple of three, four rugrats, right? and you may get $10,000, $15,000 in tax return. But guess what that child ended up doing for the rest of their life? Paying taxes. And that was the goal from start. So strategically, through misinformation, deceptive tactics, things of that nature. And we're so caught up into this me first concept of existing, I can't even see what is happening in the long run. And how dare you come to me and try to tell me the truth when these people are helping me? But you're a part of the problem because you are creating divide by being ignorant and continuing to chase the, like Roland's saying right now, chasing a little bit of change that is being given to you right now. You're destroying these concepts, and you're destroying the foundation of our identity, which is the family structure.
Nail, hammer, head. Y'all hit it. Yeah. And it don't matter if I'm hosting or not. Coach is gonna continue to steal my talking points. It feels like he got a camera over here looking at my notes. Cause I was going straight to the bipartisanship. Straight there. That's why I was starting. And so I'm with you 100%. If we're arguing, but you said if we're not arguing about truth, what are we arguing about? We're arguing about the illusion that we're governing ourselves. Right? When I look at, the older I get, the more I understand that I don't have a representation. But I thought the whole fight was about taxation without representation, right? But there's no who represents the interest of Tawami, the interest of Garfield, the interest of Dwayne, the interest of Roland. Do we really have representation there? So we're arguing about the illusion of self-governance. Once they get in office and after we vote them in, it's American interest. And American interest is normally not in the same alignment as the interest of the people who voted that person in. And so, we could argue about it all day. I think some people agree or disagree with who the specific politician is based upon their affiliation, who they identify with. Notice this is why you normally go and you look at the polls, you look at the numbers. That one person who puts their name on the ballot as independent get about 3 votes because everybody's going to vote for their guy, for their girl, just simply because of affiliation. So
they don't care anyway because they're rich.
Right. That's really who's voting, if you want to be honest. But I digress on that one. But and you're right, they normally are rich. Man, I enjoyed this conversation. Almost feel like we ain't been on here long enough. Y'all been hitting it, knocking this one out the park. So I do appreciate you all. I appreciate everybody in the chat. But it is time for our bittersweet moment. It's time for our final thoughts.
I think we had a great conversation today. I learned a lot. My final thoughts are pretty short and simple this week. We all have our different perspectives on the government. We all have our different perspectives and opinions on masculinity. We all have our different perspectives on everything that was shared tonight. My takeaway and my what I want to leave you with is just don't be. I want to say don't be. You live your life how you want to, but there is a difference between sharing and being part of a conversation on social media or with someone that's valuable and one that's not valuable. So when you're having conversation with people, again, you do what you want to your life, but my final thought would be to just make sure that you spend your time with having valuable conversations, especially when it talks about politics, global chaos, masculinity, all these different things, because these can be some very hot button topics for people. So, yeah, that's my final thoughts for this evening.
Oh man, it's like I'm in the dark. Okay. I think that it was a great conversation, and Unc just was talking about valuable conversation. I think that we need to focus more on our values so that we're not so attached to, oh, that's a brother, so he think like me, or that's a sister, or these people think like this. I see you and I respect what you bring to the table as whatever you are. But if we don't share the same values, I really can't see there being a growth within our community. Now, if you think of a certain way, you have another community to attend to, and I have zero problem with that. I'm not going to do anything to negate what you say or do over there, because I'm trying to build over here where our values say that I'm a respecter of persons, no matter what creed, no matter what color. I look at people the same. And when we get to that point to where we can look at our values versus look at this exterior, then we can actually grow and we can actually become a harmonious community. And we can bring our differences together where we can make a joyful noise, because you're doing what you're supposed to do. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And we all singing different notes, but to the same tune. So I appreciate you, Dwami, and thank you for allowing us. I'm just happy my brother's back on the podcast. You know, it's been a long time. Bye.
I greatly appreciate all of that. And I really enjoyed this conversation. I think when it comes down to this conversation, I love where we started off. We started off talking about social identity and social harmony. And I like right where Roland ended it off, because I think that's key, right? I think in order for us to get to harmony, we have to go back to, like we talked about previously, there's a responsibility that each one of us have within our in group that allows us to harmonize with our out group. And I think that's the key. We got to first get our personal identity in line so that we can get to the point of having a social identity with those people who believe like we believe. And then collectively, now we can serve, right? We can serve other communities, and other communities can serve our community. And we have this dance that goes on to where we take the opportunity to serve one another. That creates the harmony that we're talking about. So now, as these collective communities start harmonizing together, we're not necessarily dependent upon what somebody outside of us is doing. We're not necessarily dependent upon what agency out there is trying to, for the lack of a better term, trying to pull us apart, because they're offering us their resources, but it comes at a cost. You can have this, but you have to do that. Be careful when we start connecting ourselves with entities like that. If I have to sacrifice members of my community, if I have to sacrifice members of my family for the sake of the resources that you're offering me, it's just like dominoes. And if you play dominoes, you know exactly what I'm about to say. All money and good money. And that is my final thought.
Man, I am ecstatic. I love this conversation. I thank you, brothers. Now y'all could go ahead and burn me back down. I hold my final thoughts, because I've kept y'all too long. So thank y'all all for indulging me. There's not really much left to say. They took all the meat off the bones. I'm right there with every last one of my brothers. We have to walk together within us. We have to walk within ourselves and understand who we are, so we can walk with one another, right? Understanding, what are we doing here? What is our circle? I think Unc talked about this, our circle in our communities last week. Can we perfect what this looks like? Can we say this is what we believe, and can we hash this out? Can we have these conversations, the tough ones and the fun ones, so that we can broad out and shine that light in this diverse world that we live in. So I appreciate every last one of you. Keep paying attention to Sister Crystal Everett. She's putting all the information out there. So we appreciate you, Sister Crystal. We thank you for all your work, right? Your advertisement and everything else. So please let's stay tuned. I think this Sunday is on you, Coach, on TikTok. So go ahead. If you're on here and you don't already follow everyone up here on TikTok, go ahead and find us the Mindset Coach. We will be live on his page come this Sunday at 11:30 Eastern, 10:30 Central Time. Do we have anything this Saturday? This is the first Saturday, so it's third and fourth, correct? I was corrected. Crystal got me right last week. So I hope everyone enjoyed the rest of y'all Friday evening. Enjoy your families. Enjoy your time of rest. And we see you again Sunday.